Welcome.
Here we go. We're starting to get some. Hello and welcome everyone. There's a weird little pause there before we got started. So I see that we finally have attendees coming in. We're going to give a few moments to allow those who registered for this webinar to sign on today. Quite a few registered, so we're going to allow a few moments here to allow everyone to get in.
Actually, while we do that, maybe we can do the reminder for the activity.
Oh, great idea, Heidi. So we're going to go ahead and be providing a link to the activity sheet. If you did not have a chance to download it, we're going to go ahead and put that in the chat box currently.
So this session is intended to be hands-on, giving you the chance to devote your time to your business as we go through the concepts. So the activity sheet will help you do that. We'll also have a chance to apply the concepts that we're talking about to your business by sharing in our chat at the bottom of the Zoom platform or top, wherever your bar is. The more you participate, the more it helps you, and it also helps the other businesses that are online.
Yeah, so with that, Heidi, I just want to give a few reminders. If you have a question that you would like answered pertaining to the information that Heidi is presenting on today, be sure to put those questions in the Q&A because we will be using the chat box a lot for comments. We have some interactive activities as well where we will be using the chat box. And so your question might get lost if you use the chat box. So please use the Q&A if you have a specific question that you would like to answer, because that'll help keep us on track and make sure that we answer that question for you.
So to start it off, kind of want to know a little bit about your businesses. Because it's a webinar, I can't see you and we don't have the benefit of personal introductions, but as a way to on topic, get to know each other a little bit, if you could share one marketing goal that you have for your business and be as specific as you can. You can just go ahead and put them in the chats. Number one marketing goal for your business.
All right, we have a couple answers coming in now, Heidi. Someone's hoping to do some automation, it looks like, with their marketing. Someone's looking to create more organic traffic through blog posts and content creation, drive customers to their sites to make a purchase.
Nice.
So we have quite a variety of marketing
And it's
goals
good
today.
because each of you can see what some of the other answers are too. So I'll let you keep adding to that as we kind of move forward, because before we start today's session, I wanted to give you a brief overview of the services and some of the resources that are available through the SBDC. The Maricopa SBDC is part of a national and state network of small business development centers. We pride ourselves in our main offering, which is no fee counseling. And here in Maricopa, we have 17 counselors. They're all across the county. Right now, we are working virtually, so we're easy to access anywhere, not on any time, but on a pretty broad basis of appointment scheduling. We also offer a lot of no-cost programs like our program today, training programs, and additional resources. We provide all of these based on funding that we get from the Small Business Administration and also by Maricopa Community College. And we also partner with the Arizona Commerce Authority. Some of our technical assistance covers the topical areas you see here. During this challenging time, I would say a major portion of our efforts are continuing to assist clients as they navigate COVID relief funding programs, our PPP and EIDL loans. We help clients identify and access their lenders. We help them with things like financial review, and we help them with things like marketing assessment, marketing planning. There are experts on our team for some specific areas, including manufacturing, technology, commercialization, and import-export. And we also hook up with the Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, PTAC. So that's for clients who want support in accessing government contracting. And our Maricopa SBDC has a variety of different resources that we make available to our clients. These are things that give you access to subscriptions that the SBDC has. Growth Wheel is a tool that actually has a lot of marketing related decision sheets that would help you through the strategy process, components of which we'll talk about today. Live Plan is a business planning tool, and working with an SBDC counselor, you have access to work on your business plan together. It also could be used to take parts of the Great Marketing Turnaround that we're doing, the 3-part series, and turn that into a full written marketing plan. Profit Sense is a financial benchmarking data tool. So if you're working with an SBDC counselor, they have access to printing out industry financial data that you can use in your own forecasting, planning, and comparison for goal setting. And then our market intelligence capabilities are through our research arm, the SBDC Net and IBIS World. So all of these tools are accessed by working with a small business development center counselor. Real quickly, the introduction slide is just to give you a little bit idea of who I am. I am versed in a variety of topics in terms of tactics, digital PR, mass media, graphics, copywriting, direct marketing, so on. Over 35 years, I've been developing and teaching these. I've taught marketing and sales through the University of Arizona's entrepreneurship program and at community colleges at the high school level and through these programs like the SBDC. But as an entrepreneur, I also understand the need that you have to create profitable customer acquisition and to get these things done fast and cost effectively. So I hope that some of the tools that I can present to you will allow you to sort of do some warp speed marketing planning. I am a promoter of customer centric marketing, and I am a promoter of having written and documented marketing programs. I also want to introduce Laura Cerna, who's co-facilitating the seminar. She's going to be handling a lot of your interactions. She's a vital contributor to our team, so I'm sure you will be getting some additional correspondence from her as well.
Yes, and before
So,
we move on, Heidi, since we're going to be talking about participation, if everyone in the chat can make sure that they're sending their chats to all panelists and attendees, that'll allow each of you to see what other people are answering and allow you guys to view each other's comments. So again, in the chat box, before you hit send, make sure you're sending it to all panelists and attendees rather than just to all panelists.
excellent advice. Yes. That helps you see some of the ideas that in the other world where we were getting together live, this would be something where we could share out loud, and this gives each of you an idea to see some of the goals and activities. So if you're just joining us lately, we were putting into chat our #1 marketing goal for your business. So I invite anybody who's a latecomer to go ahead and just add to the list of different goals there, which include a lot of things including things like organic traffic, being able to drive customers to their website, things that have to do with automation, people trying to get more traffic into their brick and mortar store. All of these are excellent goals. But we're going to move on because there's a lot of content to cover. And I would like to go ahead and give our whole group a poll to answer. This is really starting us off on the topic of today's topic, messaging. I did some research about what influences purchase behavior, and I'd like to know what you think. So in our poll, you're answering the question, what do researchers say is the key to influencing others' behaviors? What do you think researchers say is the key to influencing other behaviors? I'll give you a second there to chime in your thoughts.
And we do have about half those answers, so just 5 more seconds to allow those latecomers to answer that question, and then I will share the results with you, Heidi. All right, we're ending the poll.
Consistency, consensus, liking, authority, reciprocity, scarcity. These are all great answers. And I'm going to tell you, you're all right. It's actually, the truth is, it was a trick question. So all of these are part of the six principles from a psychologist research of over 30 years. Dr. Cialdini, he wrote a book on persuasion and influence, and in it he listed these six science-based principles of persuasion. And this is due to some research he had done in the field. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about it to start us off. Today, these have been used by marketers to create basically what I call messages that make things happen. So consistency is basically one of those that mirrors my favorite marketing tenet. Just like in the real estate world, they always talk about location, location, location. In marketing, we talk about repetition, 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 which is really about consistency. So we're going to talk about this a little bit later when we look at having our buyers make small initial commitments over and over that lead to our bigger action, our sale. Consensus is the social proof. So that is people following the actions of others. Today in the world of internet, we would probably call this the influencer syndrome. Liking is anything that has to do with mutual goals, cooperation. It could be compliments, similarities, finding similarities with your target market. Authority is obviously just having the credibility, having the support of knowledgeable experts, also could be influencers. An example of this that I thought was interesting in the research was they did an experiment about lead conversions from initial phone inquiry. So if somebody calls up and is just calling about your service, maybe they got your phone number online in a Google business listing. When the reception staff answered the call, first mentioned the colleague who they were referring them to and with their credentials, they ended up having a far better conversion rate. So they would say something like, Sandra has 12 years experience in corporate law. Let me send you over towards her, or something of that nature. That idea of credibility and knowledge and experience increased the conversion of those inquiries into customers. Reciprocity, that's finding the win-win. An example of this I thought was great from the restaurant. Most of you restaurant owners will understand this. It was an experiment about how tips increased whenever the bill was given with a cookie or mint or something. If that extra little nice reciprocity of even a mint, the tip actually increased. And interestingly enough, they even showed in the research that the gift was doubled if two mints were provided, and quadrupled the increase that they had. Most interesting of all was that if the waiter or the waitress, the server had provided a mint and then paused and said, "Oh, for you nice people, I'll give you an extra one," then there was a 23% increase in the tip. So it was about how this particular extra gift or reciprocity was given. And then last one is scarcity, and that's people wanting what they can't have or what they stand to lose. In addition to what they stand to gain, there is some influence happening in what they have to lose, and we'll talk about that when we talk about the principles of sales promotion. So what we want to do today is set aside time for you to give your full attention and thinking to your marketing strategy. Um, we're going to look at some marketing techniques and communication that are best practices so that you can use them to focus on your business and apply them, so that you can upgrade and do your own marketing turnaround. So we did have a session one, and building on that last session, or even just starting today, we're going to talk about the unique selling proposition that helps you craft some good stories of influence and will help you lead to increasing your sales. We're going to start with something, a fabulous analysis, and you'll see why it's fabulous, that will help you look a little bit more closely at your important features and benefits in your company and help you craft those right messages to the right audience. And then you can use our planner for building some persuasive customer communication. We'll talk about sales promotion and how they're linked to goals. And then in the end, we're going to actually talk a little bit about content planning and some tools for that. So the idea is that you're just going to get some nuggets to start that action plan to uplift your own marketing communications activities right now in the COVID period. And as you use some of these tools, you may build them into much more expansive and organized marketing guideline system, a marketing plan. So I want to start with a little bit of a recap from last session, because each of these sessions, although they build on one another, you can pick up from where we're at, because I'm going to do a little bit of a review. So during the first session, we talked about this formula of having the right message about the right product or service that's delivered to the right audience at the right time. And most of last session, we really focused on number 3, the right audience. We discussed how that definition of our target market is really critical and fundamental to all of the rest of our marketing. And we even created a customer persona to help really identify and get really closer to the wants and needs of our key customers. The important thing as you're going forward is to make sure that you do define your target market. So we talked about each of these areas as being part of a target market definition. So you want to describe them by demographic, geographic, psychographic, and buyer behavior. A good target market definition is really important, because even if you got the message right, you still need to deliver it to the right people for it to matter. So if you missed last session, don't worry. We'll be repeating it in a few months. And there are also many tools available with your counselors to help you define your target market. But today we're going to use target market and positioning in order to come up with this right message to the right about your right product or service at the right time. So, right messaging to the right audience is also about having that right product and service positioned to satisfy their needs and wants. So this is kind of like the formula of honing what it is and how we are positioning in the market. The definition of positioning is your brand position and the relationship of your offering compared to other options in the marketplace. So its key components are: it comes from the customer's perception, not yours, and it's compared to other options, which could be competition, it could be indirect offering as well. So to use that formula, we really need to understand both the problem and the solution that matters to that key target market segment. So that's really important to have this customer perception aspect. So I asked last session's attendees, oh, here's a positioning map that shows kind of the way that this would show up in terms of a positioning in the fast food restaurant world. I asked last session's attendees to come up with their unique selling principle out of their positioning. If you have worked on this, or if you newcomers have a unique selling position or some kind of a value proposition, it can be called different things. I invite you to share that also in the chat. I know that some of you are working on some audio visuals with Laura, and so I will continue to go on, and please continue to work with her. But go ahead and put your unique selling principle, if you have one, to share in the chat. This helps others kind of get an idea of what that unique selling principle is. So if you did work on that in the past session, then feel free to share. A USP is supposed to differentiate you and your company from others in the industry. It's going to sort of be a leader in when we create our messages. So it's not really centered around necessarily what you think, but it's about what your target market wants and needs. So we went over the ways to develop a unique selling proposition, and this is kind of a template formula. Not every unique selling proposition will follow this formula, but it's an easy way to kind of help you build that particular formula. So an example could be, let's say you are a commercial cleaning company. I think we might have somebody in that category. So let's say that you've got some attributes that are desirable by your target market. You've figured this out through some kind of primary or secondary research, and you think that the most desired attributes have to do with your or you have desired attributes of professional service and safe products, but you know that there's a lot of companies that have the same thing. They've got, a lot of professionals out there, and everybody has access to similar products. And the demand is really big, right? Because COVID has created a lot of need for clean environments, but it's also attracted more competition. Customers can find options faster than ever because the internet has changed the landscape of where and how we're looking for vendors. Choices everywhere. But you started to think about, well, if everybody has professional service, what's really unique and wanted? So as you did your positioning, you decided that your differentiation that you think is first and foremost, which is really about what your USP is, has a little bit more to do with your technology. So my example would be the name, it could be High Tech Cleaning Company is a full service custodial business that uses proven leading edge methods to provide the most effective sterilization techniques that businesses need to for extra protection. You could actually add an and. Maybe you say you have a satisfaction guarantee. So I want to give you some ideas of what would make a good unique selling principle, because we're not spending today's segment on this. This is something that you can work on off in the time after this webinar, but I want to give you some hints. The reason we're doing this is not because this is something that you are going to broadcast directly or verbatim out into your marketing. It's really a tool for you. It's a litmus test to weigh your future marketing efforts against. So you can look at any individual messaging or campaign and see whether it's really supporting what you have determined is that unique selling principle or the differentiation. It's kind of like the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, that if everything adds up into this unique selling proposition, you will be communicating better to your audience, that consistency. It's not a mission statement, though. A mission statement is sort of why your business exists. It's including promises to yourself. It might be from a standpoint of income. It includes promises maybe to staff or the community. It could include your customers, but a mission is different. A USP focuses specifically on your target market. So that's where it's different than a mission statement. It's also not a slogan because, again, I said it's behind the scenes. And you actually are using it to sort of differentiate for yourself from the competition. So it's something that you use to inform your marketing, where a slogan is your marketing. So it could help you come up with your slogan eventually. It's part of that, but it's not really that part of the message. I always ask people, well, is that really unique? Could you substitute another company in your same industry and have this be just as true? So think about that. You can leave off the name, maybe share it with your husband or wife or best friend and say, who would you put in this blank? And you just want to really make sure that you have something that is different from others. So if you haven't done the USP exercise, make time for it. It becomes an umbrella for managing the messaging creation that we're going to do today. So we're going to do today something called FAB analysis. And I want to tell you a little bit why we're going to do it, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty with the worksheet. So FAB is an acronym for features, advantages, and benefits. And what it's going to do is it really sorts out from all your product service offering the core values that you can hold up against that unique selling principle. It will also help you determine which are the right features out of all the features that you might have, which ones will give you the most bang for the buck in promoting it. So it'll give you some clarity in that. It also can expose weak features. So the features that are there, but maybe don't offer a clear benefit to the end user or the customer. It's another tool to keep you in the mind of the prospective customer. Anything you can do to think like your prospective customer is going to help you do better market messaging. So let's take a look. Let's start with the features. The features answer the question, what? So these are the specs. They are important, but they're sometimes boring. Still, this is where we have to start. These are the defining features. Some of them might even be hidden from the end user because they could be your materials, they could be your construction or ingredients or unobvious aspect, but the features really aren't the story. They're just features. So this what is going to give the list of something that the customer can touch, feel, smell, see, measure. It's attributes of your product. And then there's the advantages. So we're going to take each item that we list as a feature and run it through the other two columns. The advantage are, well, what for? It's what the features do. And you want to be able to name an advantage for each feature. It's one of those clues if you don't have an advantage for that, if you can't say why it's actually important. The advantages are sort of a bridge to the end, which is what we really care about, the benefit. Um, so an advantage comes from those USPs, or it's connected to that USP in some type of way. It's contributing to the end um, criteria for your buyer. But when we turn it into a benefit statement, we're answering the question, so what? So if a feature is what, an advantage is what for, or sometimes it's why. What for? Well, it's because of this. So what or because? It's how the product enhances, improves the customer's life and how a problem is going to be solved. So if, let's say, a good example is like to use a food service delivery for this. So an example from a client that had had a food thing. And I shared actually the advantage that Blue Apron had given out as part of their marketing. So Blue Apron, if you don't know, is a company that does delivers food through the online service. And so the way they turned their features in terms of recipes and ingredients. So they send this kit of recipes, ingredients, is they said, well, we have these step-by-step recipes and these fresh ingredients, and they have these advantages. But the so what part of their messages is so that you don't have to plan out your meals each week and go to the grocery store. That's the so what. So benefit and features, benefit versus features is to really look at everything you have first as a feature before you start to get into the nitty gritty of the advantages and the benefits. Um, this is, I think, more important now during COVID as you're restructuring and trying to reinvent some of your own product and services. Some of this examination can actually lead you to areas that you might want to address in terms of either existing features or features that you have that you maybe didn't promote. And I always go back to a really old example in this category. There was a long ago company called Arm& Hammer. I think they've been around for over 100 years. And they had this little product called baking soda, which makes your baked goods more fluffy. That's why they named it baking soda. But they weren't selling enough, and this was like halfway through, 50 years into it, they weren't selling enough. And so the makers thought, well, let's examine our features. And one of the features that they had not marketed was that it absorbed odors. And the advantage that came out of the fact that it absorbed odors was that it could make something that smells bad smell less bad. The benefit was, so what? If you open a box in your refrigerator or throw it down your drain, then you don't get a stinky refrigerator or sink. They made a ton of sales, expanded their market, and they're actually using that marketing today. And it came out about 40 years ago. So thinking about features, advantages, and benefits are really a great opportunity for you in this changing time as you're reinventing and doing turnaround type thinking for your marketing to really start at that most basic level. I will do a disclaimer or a note is to really make sure that you are able to back up your claims. This will come and bite you if you don't think this through. You'll want to have some proof points as you go through your advantages, your feature advantages. So that cleaning company that has the most effective surface sterilizing techniques, they may have to say, well, we've got white papers and studies to back up our system and data. Just make sure that you have something that's going to be able to support that because you'll need that as you build your messages. So let's take a look at this for your business. We're going to use the marketing message activity sheet. So this is like a message planner. So this is the one that Laura talked about or put the link in earlier about downloading. You can use it and fill it out on your computer as a Word document, or you can print it out. You might be able to work on it more easily during this webinar if you print it out. We're going to be adding or doing this exercise for each target market. So if you were really using this, you would have multiple pages, but we're just going to kind of do a quick run through an example of what that would look like. So the first activity is with the marketing message planner. And we're going to use it to do that fab analysis and find out which features and benefits are the strongest. We probably won't complete the entire process, but we can get an understanding of it. So I'd like you to kind of go work along with me as I show you a few examples. So the first part is to complete the top portion with your USP. Now, as I said, some of you haven't done your USP, so you might not have that for right now, but I'm going to try and just cut and paste into my version. And this is sort of what I talked about before. High-tech cleaning company, full-service custodial, uses proven leading-edge methods to provide fast and effective sterilizing techniques that businesses need, and offers a satisfaction guarantee. So if you haven't done that, I don't think it's going to be possible for you to do it really in the next minute or so, but just make a note to yourself that this is a good starting point for you to work on after this webinar, because it is that umbrella for the message creation. But I want you to focus on the FAB analysis step 1 right now. So you're going to decide what target market you're doing this for. Let's just say that since my USB has to do with businesses that need extra protection, I have a variety of those. But my first one I'm going to do is physician offices. Make sure I spell this right. Maybe I'm going to do schools later. Maybe I have a different target market that has to do with banks. And you may not be as quite as discrete, but this is the work that we did last week about really understanding your target market segments and finding out those homogeneous qualities so that you can have your marketing really talking to the individual markets. So once you know what market segment you did, and last week we did a persona. So we had an actual kind of person or a profiled description of that segment. And that's really helpful as you do this process. So if you have that persona, you can even put that persona as part of this process. So then we're going to make a list of all the features in this first column on table 1. And remember, if your company offers services like the cleaning company instead of products, you're going to be listing service attributes rather than necessarily physical benefits. So let's say our first feature was that satisfaction guarantee. And that guarantee is one of the features that we think stands out. It's part of our unique selling principle. And then we have to think about, well, what is the advantage of that? And you may have several advantages, but let's say that you think that the advantages is if something isn't done correctly, it will be redone immediately. There's my advantage. So you want to go ahead and take that feature, whatever it is, turn it into an advantage. The next step is to translate that advantage and that feature into a benefit in column 3. And remember, for the target market, your segment you're working on, you may have some of these features come up in other target markets, and you might have the benefit translation be completely different for those other target markets. So really go back to thinking about what the because is for the target market. And let's say that that this means that the physician's office isn't worried about having a sterile waiting room, so they can focus on the patients, something of that nature. Something that tells exactly what this really means. You're taking away the fact that you're not going to have your staff out there doing some of these things, maybe because it's already been taken care of, maybe in overnight. So that's my kind of example. Maybe we should do another one for a product. Let's think of a product. Maybe it's a high-end food product. Let's pretend this high-end food product has a health benefit of, and it's I can spell it, antioxidant rich. So this feature of my food product is that it has a lot of antioxidant properties. And the advantage to that is and we can back this up, that it is immunity enhancing. So what is the benefit? So maybe this is another thing to pay attention, not only to your target market, but think about COVID times. How can the benefit translation be pumped up to fit the current needs of your customers. So it's meeting your customer needs, but what about current needs? So maybe it has something to do with stressful times, helps protect you against disease. And I'm not writing the entire thing down here because I'm not great typing when I'm doing this in front of everybody, but you get the idea that you're taking something that's there and really looking at what you can prove and then translating into some kind of a benefit. So I would like you to take a few minutes here. We're going to actually pause. I'll go back to the slides instructions. Um, so I want you to, if you've left the USP for now, if you have one, you can put it in. I know you know a target segment or focus in on one of your target segments and make a list of features in that first column. Then come up for each of those features with an advantage and then translate it into that benefit. So by this point, you might have already got a couple of those down, but I'm going to give you a few more minutes for some of you to work on this. Now, you may need more than 5 rows to cover all your features, turn your paper over, or go ahead and add rows to it if you're working on online. There's no magic number 5. That's just how many are on the form. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to work on that.
Hi, Heidi. We have a request if you could put the example sheet up one more time. Excellent. Thank you. And would you be able to zoom in a little bit so that way they can see the table portion a little more clearly? Perfect. Thank you. Hopefully that helps anyone who wanted to see those examples one more time. And as you are completing this, just a couple reminders that if you do have a specific question for Heidi, maybe as you're working through this worksheet and something comes up, please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A. And again, if you just have quick comments or you want to share with the rest of the attendees, make sure to switch your settings to send to all panelists and attendees rather than just all panelists. So that way you guys can bounce ideas off of each other.
So I'll give you a few more minutes.
We do have a question about the worksheet, Heidi.
Go ahead.
Someone is having some trouble with coming up with an advantage and they own a pet sitting company. Any thoughts of maybe something that they might be able to put there?
No, but I will tell you that that's one of the purposes of this sheet. So we sometimes think that every feature is important. And some features, if they don't have an advantage, it still may be a feature. You don't take that feature away, but if it doesn't have an advantage, it may not be important as part of your selling market. So really ask yourself, is this feature really important if I can't come up with an advantage? Advantages go back to that target market persona that we created last week. So thinking about your target market and why that feature offers something that could be useful to them. So does it mention? I'm not seeing the questions whether it mentions what the feature is.
Not specifically. Maybe it's just their service of dog sitting.
Mhm. So think about all of the services, the aspects of the service. So in terms of how you break down what things you do as a dog sitter. So do you provide walks on a certain frequency level? I'm not really familiar with the business line. And what advantage does that have that the pet is going to be able to have time outdoors and exercise while the person is gone? So what? So the person doesn't come home to a really grouchy um, pet. There could be a better way of translating it based on your knowledge of your customer and your product or service, but that's kind of a example of that translation. Hope that helps a little bit. I'm going to need to move on in our process on the remaining steps. So if you didn't finish through your features and get all the fab points down, remember to complete this exercise later so we can go on to some more of this actual detail. I'm going to change my screen size a little bit. Oops, too much. Okay, so we're going to talk about messaging. Actually, I did want to mention, thank you, Americano put in their USP in the chat, and I just wanted to read it for everybody because I thought it was a really good example. Americano is purpose-focused company that attracts socially conscious and health-conscious people by providing low sugar, low net carb nut butters that give back. So they've got that direction down, and they've got that yardstick against which they can hold all of their marketing content against. So that was thank you for sharing that in the chat. So we're going to talk about key messages, and this is sort of translating again the benefit. But at this point, one of the neat things about doing Fab is that the key messages should start to write themselves. They're really just cleaning up the benefit translation and brainstorming against that, and really kind of trying to keep these notes here as very simple. So I do want to move over here too. A key message is 1 to 3 sentences about the main benefit that you want your customer to retain. And you're going to ask yourself whether it agrees with that unique selling principle. You're going to try and keep it relevant, relatable, and this is the area where you try and really make it compelling. So this is going back to some of those psychology of influence. Um, so as you go through this, you will advance your skills in this by building some supporting messages, those proof points and things I mentioned. But for right now, we're just trying to keep it a little bit simple. Um, one of the things in the key message is that I would like you to keep it really customer focused. So using active you or your. If you, for instance, eating Hershey's Kisses makes you happy, that's the so what. But if you just say happiness comes from chocolate or from Hershey's, the happiness comes is not you centered. So keeping it with that. And then, as I said, really trying to boil it down to a key message if you can. So let's just say I'm going to do a cut and paste here for my example because it's a little bit long. So let's just take this is kind of a little bit similar to Americanos actually. My example was a food product. And their target market was snackers, and let's just say we went through the fab and they had outlined a particular benefits that have to do with how good it tastes and the immunity qualities and saving animals. So their messages that they boiled it down is when you snack, reach for great tasting endangered species chocolate because it will make you feel better in more than one way. With each delicious bite, you'll be boosting your immunity and saving animals. So I can already see this eventually, turning into a campaign and headlines: treat yourself, save animals. So this idea of dual things where you're achieving two feel goods at once. But the idea is to try and translate what you came up with up here into something. And don't worry about wordsmithing it. You'll be able to do that later. I think you really want to try and get some simple sentences down, one or two that can be transferred from the work that you did above. So we'll take a little bit of time to do that. If you can, oh, actually, let me talk about the second part of it so that you can work on both at one time. The buying process preference, this is basically for later use, just because later when you're going to be stringing together the steps and goals of your communication, you might want to know your buying process. So maybe part of this is for the chocolate company is that they've um, they've realized that their customers have this problem to solve because they snack a lot and then feel bad, and so they understand the buying process of this customer is to do an information search or ask friends for ideas. Maybe this customer surfs websites about socially responsible companies or saving animals. And maybe this is the next step after their research is trial and they buy just one of something and so on. And if you can go through what it is, your customer's decision making process, just in bullet points down here, that's going to help you as well later on. So I'm going to go ahead and try and give you this a little bit more time to work on this. Going back to our next steps, you're going to be working on your key message and under your buying process. So that's the two steps that we want you to do. Make notes about how the target market purchases and write some words down or some sentences that kind of pull all of that work that you did up in the feature, advantage, benefit together. So I'll give you a little bit more time to work on that.
And while they're working on that, Heidi, we did have a couple more unique selling USP come in. Immaculate is a construction cleaning company that provides final cleaning services to and for construction projects by focusing on people first, allowing us to deliver high quality, consistent work, and excellent customer service.
Great. So one of the things that we talked about last session, and so Immaculate will be honing this a little bit further, possibly to really define what high quality is, because quality can be interpreted so many different ways. So if you can really think about and go back to your FAB analysis to help you determine, high quality is an advantage, but what are the things that lead to it, and what is the so what? So as you do that, sometimes this can work in a backwards effect. But one of the dangers that I pointed out last session in USPs is to use generalist language such as quality or good service or excellent service, because excellent service is completely different in a cleaning business than it is in a restaurant. And you want your USP to communicate specifically to your customer and your industry. So that's one of the way to polish it up. But excellent job there, Immaculate. Sometimes I don't know if our talking makes it harder for people to think. So I'm going to be quiet for a little bit just so they can just get some notes down for your key message, just to get a starter. Give you about 60 more seconds here. Okay. So we need to move on, but that's okay. You can come back to this, and you're not trying to get everything perfect for your next social media post. You're just trying to get things generally down in a couple of sentences so that you can work on the actual wording from there. So let's talk about it. How did examining the feature advantage benefit clarify what your benefits are to the consumer? And Laura, I think it would be good to have another little check-in poll on, this particular exercise. Was it easy? Did it reveal something new? Was it difficult? Um, Go ahead and answer the poll. And if you have another comment, then go ahead and add that in the chat as well.
And I know some of you have been having some poll issues as they come up. It is a separate pop-up window that typically comes up, so you might want to make sure it's not behind your main Zoom screen.
Or sometimes settings for
Mm-hmm.
blog pop-ups. But yeah, it's really helpful to interact with you since I can't be in the same room with you to find out, how did this exercise really work with your features, advantages, and benefits.
And for those of you who are answering other, if you could share, if you feel comfortable sharing in the chat, perhaps we can know like what was this experience like for you? All right, I'm going to go ahead and end that poll now and share the results with you, Heidi.
Good. So there are, for most of us, we kind of maybe had some little thing that popped out that we hadn't seen before, something that gave us an idea. And that's really the purpose of it. As you repeat this with different target market segments, sometimes even the comparison of one segment to the other. Those of you that had a real easy time of it, great. And there's those of you who, this can be a difficult process. So it could be a topic for work with your SBDC counselor if you have one. This is a great thing to use more minds and putting them together. Sometimes you would discover, as we just talked about a little bit with the pet sitting, features that maybe are not useful or less useful for promoting your product. That's just as much of a win as when you end up discovering which products or features translate best into a benefit. So consider looking at that. It's really, again, a matter of helping you get more into the minds of your prospective customer. But make notes of these particular areas so that you can address them as you're moving forward with your strategy. I wanted to stop there and see. I don't know if there are any questions that anybody has up to this point.
We did have one question I thought popped up somewhere in the chat. I don't know if that person might want to put it in the Q&A. I think it had something to do similar to Immaculate. It was about using quality as a feature and how they could do that. I think they had a jewelry company. Yep. So it says here, can quality be used as a feature for my jewelry company as it is extremely important?
Okay, I will show my ignorance about jewelry, but I'm going to say that you're going to want to spell it out much more granularly. So what does quality mean? I know diamonds have the C's and clarity and all that. So is that part of it? Or does it have to do with the materials that you use? Or does it have to do with the construction of the pieces? Or does it have to do whatever it is that is your support for that quality is really what you want to focus in on, because quality is a word that can mean different things to different people. And plus, you also want to bring out the hidden aspects of what you might offer that's different. So you and your competitor both say quality, but really, how are you going to substantiate that? Because it's such a vague term. This is another, like I said, another thing that might take more than one head to grapple with. Working with your counselor, I have suggested to some clients that I've worked with that this is an area where maybe some primary customer research is involved to figure out how your customer defines quality, your target market appreciates what about the quality that you have. So there's a lot of ways to get down to that answer, but I think that when you know that you need to define it, then you know that you're on to getting your marketing messages more effective, because saying quality isn't enough to persuade. You have to really spell it out. So hopefully that answered it. So after this, we would complete, this activity sheet with the key message and the story builder and support messages and proofs. Um, what I'd like to do is just kind of run through that a little bit. Um, the the activity when you were doing this, you did one market segment. I would like you to go back and do different target markets. If you have multiple market segments, I mentioned in my example that, there could be different types of customers for the cleaning company, and each of those customers might have a different so what or benefit message. If you do this for each of your segments, you also might discover that there's a better match to your advantages for certain segments. Particularly now, it might have changed than what it was in the past. And if there are stronger segments that match your advantages, then that's another win in terms of targeting your message to the right audience, your right message to the right audience. And I already mentioned this, to work with the SBDC counselors, so that you have some other minds to get into that. So we could spend a little bit more time on that, but we're kind of halfway through, and I really want to talk about sort of some formulas to put your communications together so that your right products go to the right audience with the right message. So I want to emphasize, I want to talk about goals. Before you do any marketing activities, you really need to ask the question, what do you want to happen? So every single communication that you do needs a specific objective that's going to be tied to those goals. It's worth spending a little bit of time here on, because this is so important. If you aren't clear about the next step, your customer is not going to be clear either. And back when we outlined a few of those points for the buying process, that's going to be helpful for dictating what those next steps are. That's why we put that note there with the FAB analysis. Because your buyer is like on a journey, and depending on your industry, it could be a really short journey or it could be a really long journey. But it's always important to know what part of that journey it is, so that you can tailor each message to a next resonating step on that journey that will become your call to action. Um, we said in the influencer research that these there was a emphasis on consistency. Well, these little incremental steps that require a little bit less incentive or a little bit smaller investment, they are part of creating the interest and the desire over a consistent time period. That's that consistency principle in action. Um, I heard it written that, you can't expect a customer to take one big leap of faith. They're going to be much easier to persuade if you ask them to take a lot of smaller steps. So the buyer's process dictates those next steps, and we start with goals. So when we talk about starting with goals, I really want you to break it down. I asked in the very beginning for people to send me some goals, and I saw some really great specific goals. And then I saw some really general goals. So it's a little bit like what we were talking about with defining quality. The more succinct you can get your goal down per communication. So you may have these overarching goals. I need to get, for more foot traffic, or I need more sales, or I need more new customers. So we're going to start with that, but then we're going to narrow it down for that conversation in each message. You want to break it down. In this first column, you'll see all these type of goals that are examples of goals related to customers. Is it retention or is it new business? You want to each communication to have a focus. Don't try and do everything at once. Maybe you want to be counteracting a competitor's making a move on your current customers, and maybe that's really the point of this communication. So get specific about it. The column 2, these show some goals that might be more related maybe to your general financial goals for your business. Or maybe it's trying to narrow it down to a specific type of product line or sales that you want. If you need, say, more high margin services to sell, or you have certain inventory you want to push, or if you're trying with new customers, you're getting trial going, you want to put your best product forward. Store traffic is another one that could be, you need a loss leader. So we're going to start with the goals, because this aspect of what your goals are is going to contribute into how you design something called sales promotion. Sales promotion is one of the most used and abused elements of marketing mix. So it's a great thing to have in our toolkit, but it's abused because we get so hung up on, well, what's the offer going to be? And we don't stop to think about why we're making that offer. And that has to do with the goals. So think of one of your primary goals and imagine that you're creating a particular communication. You can say it's a communication you might be planning right now. It doesn't matter if that communication is an e-blast or a social media campaign. Just think about a particular goal for a specific communication that you're planning coming up. Make sure that it kind of fits into that target market segment that you just worked on in the prior activity, because it'll be easier to keep moving forward on that same topic. So for that target market, come up with a specific objective. And if you could just maybe put it in the chat, or at least write it down. If you'd like to share it, please share it in the chat. A specific goal for your next communication. Maybe it's just a repeat purchase, or maybe it's an upsize in their purchase, a larger purchase. Or maybe your goal has something to do with that first stage of the buyer's process, which is information search. And maybe you just want them to download something, get on your mailing list. So I want you to think about that goal, because we're going to come back to that later. We're going to work with that goal shortly. I want to talk about the connection with sales promotion. And to do that, I'm like some of the goals about an event is another, a great attendance or registration is a good goal for a particular communication. Registration is very specific. Getting on our text lists, getting on any kind of list is a great goal. So these are good examples. You guys are on the right track. So I want to define sales promotion a little bit, because it's part of how we're going to connect back to the goals in terms of creating some incentives. Sales promo may or may not be part of your next message. It really does depend on your goals, but it is part of the marketing mix, and it can be very valuable, and we'll talk about why. Even if you don't use sales promotion heavily, this is a time period where it's seemingly more difficult to create desire and action. So something like sales promotion might be an appropriate thing for COVID times. The defining characteristics, though, of sales promotion is it's a short-term incentive. That is really key, because one of those influencers that we had up above was scarcity. Short term is one of the things that creates scarcity. Another characteristic of sales promotion is that there's definitely that action. That's why I had you start by thinking with the goal. You need to know what's that end in mind. It's really kind of having that goal that helps you design, and we'll talk about it, what your sales promotion is. Actually, I wanted to put another one on here, but I didn't. And that's that sales promotion actually can contribute to spreading information about your brand or educating new customers. This is generally a side benefit of sales promotion, because brand awareness is sort of a marketing goal in and of itself. And it usually utilizes different tactics in the marketing mix. Um, but I just wanted to mention that it's definitely a contributor to brand awareness. So I don't want to leave that out. It's not usually the main reason. When targeting a new market, if you're targeting a new market, sales promotion definitely plays a part, because how many of you are trying to reach a new market? You have to overcome With a new market, you have to overcome a barrier, usually of switching, the switching cost or the switching barrier. And you have to overcome that, and you have to have something that's really going to incentivize them. So designing a communication with a good sales promotion offer. So just remember, going back to that target market, this really has to fit your target market, because it doesn't matter if that offer is really good, but it's going out there to the wrong audience, it's not going to have the same conversion. So it's your turn again. So we're going to think about your target market that you put down in your exercise with the FAB. And then the goal that hopefully you just wrote down. Some of you put them in the chat. Some of you might have written it down. Something you want to happen as a result of your next ad campaign, as a result of your next marketing message. And I want you to take that goal and see if you can translate it to a possible sales promotion. And I have the list up here, but actually, Laura's going to put up a poll. So I want you to think about this first, and then she'll put up a poll of which sales promotion you think might match your current communication objective. Laura's not going to put up a poll. She did. So I've got some ideas here. You might do a discount. You might do something that is adding value to it, a bonus, buy this, get that, or an add-on that comes with your service. You might be doing a contest or prize. Maybe some of you wanted to get lists, build lists, contests and prizes can do that. Maybe you are trying to get consistency in terms of visits, and you want people to come back day after day to whatever your promotion is. Maybe you need terms because this is something right now that's a difficult purchase for people. So look at these. You can pick multiple on here. You don't have to choose right one for this idea right now. I just want you to think about which ones might match this marketing goal that you came up with, that you put in chat or you wrote down for your next ad campaign.
All right, and I'm going to go ahead and share those results with you, Heidi. We did have some last minute voters come in, so we'll a couple more seconds. I saw them come in right as I was going to close
We're
it.
doing these really, really quick, and sometimes you need
Yeah.
to think about this a little bit. So you know what? No one's going to hold you to your answer, guys.
All right, let me share those results with you, Heidi.
Okay, so this is very interesting, but not atypical. That the majority of us are looking at some kind of discounting and couponing, because price often, if you were with me last session, we talked about how price is often one of the top buyer criterias, and we have to understand that if we're going to figure out how to incentive. But remember, these are short term. This isn't discounting the value of your product line overall. There are people who traditionally don't do a lot of discounting because of where they're positioned in the market. They might be looking at that right now based on what their goals are of new acquisition. Some of you picked the add-ons, the contents, not anybody into the special payment terms. And maybe there's some other things, because there's a full-on list here, and there's a lot of other things that you could do in terms of sales promotion that will match more directly with your goals. That's not an exhaustive list, because I wanted you to really just see how some sales promotions match different marketing objectives. So if you're wanting customer leads, you would probably do that giveaway or run that contest because you want to collect that prospect info. So your sales promotion needs to be designed about that goal of collecting prospecting information. So if you have a long journey for that customer to go, you want to get their information so they can continue to market to them. If you are trying to get repeat business, well, maybe you would do a bring them back offer or a promo code or some type of a couponing thing in the Valpaks. If your goals had to do with a different product, and maybe you picked something, you want your high margin product to go, so maybe it's a difficult product, and offering those terms, lower interest or pay later kind of things, something that would make sense to your product line or your target market. The point is that as you're crafting your marketing message, you need to know the goal and know how that incentive, if you're going to use sales promo, how that incentive is going to match it. You don't want to arbitrarily choose some sales promotion without considering the goal. So let's look at the actual structuring of a marketing message. I'm going to talk about something called the AIDA model. This is just to help you craft your actual messages. Many of you may have heard it before. It's just an acronym, and its intent is to incentivize with the end in mind. So the AIDA model is kind of like a tool to getting us to go through the buyer process. Um, but this is could be applying to the entire journey or could be in just one marketing message, bringing somebody through this process. The first thing is they have to recognize that there's some message in front of them. You have to get their attention. The second is you start to get their interest. You get them to continue beyond that attention because they want to know more. Um, then you create the desire, and then that leads to action. Again, this could happen, this whole process could happen over the entire customer's journey, many interactions, or it could be something that happens within one message. But so it's very helpful to use as a template as you start to build your actual stories and put them in the context of communicating, whether it's online or offline. It's just like a template. These are the 4 steps. The action, keep in mind, may not, because we may be just talking about one message here, and the goal of your message may not be buying. So your action may be something else that we just talked about in your goal. So keep in mind that the A for the action at the end is the step you want them to take now, the very next step dictated by that marketing goal. So before you write one word of content, know what you want them to do. Are you wanting them to share your post, your social media post to their friends? Are you wanting them to click on this link to do this download? Are you wanting them to just find your website? Starting with the end in mind for each communication is really what we're going to do today. So we're going to use this AIDA worksheet backwards. Okay, so we're going to go back to your marketing message sheet and we're going to go to page 2 and we're going to use the AIDA formula backwards so that we start with the end in mind. And this you would do for each communication. So we're going to just kind of create that idea of going backward with that end action in mind. We're flipping the template. If you haven't gotten it out, if you can switch over because you're going to work on this marketing message and you'll see the AIDA backwards. So under call to action, recalling that goal or objective that you thought of before, what are the actions that you want them to take? And then also I'm adding this idea that maybe you need to think about what's it's going to make it easy. So I'm going to give you some pointers on this regarding what else you might want to do. Let's flip over to our sheet here. Okay. So remember our key principles of influencing. We're trying to get these small commitments. So make your action something that can be done very easily. And if you're going to use one of those sales promotions, you need to make the action related. It has to be whatever they're going to do to receive the offer of your sales promotion. You can also look at the buying processes and buying preferences that you set up here so that you can get the detail as to what those steps are so that you can tailor your action to one of those steps in the buyer's decision making process. So I want you to fill out this call to action for the marketing message that you have in mind that you're planning. So I'm going to say maybe for mine it's I'm looking at the journey of promoting my service, and I'm expecting my customer to be at this stage in gathering information. And I have a how-to video that for my service that really explains how it works. This is a step we call a soft call to action. It's not very committal. It's less invasive. They can go watch the video and it could be that completely innocuous. Watching a video, they don't have to enter their email. If they follow a page, maybe they can be tracked. If they open a chat window, now they're visible. So maybe this is the least invasive. But those are other calls to action. Having a chat window that they can open on your Facebook page or on your website, that can be a call to action. Asking them to go viral for you, sharing a post, that's a call to action. If you are deeper into the journey now and you have a bigger incentive, maybe you can get them to download something so that you get their full contact information. Maybe they can request a demo or request a quote or get a downloaded materials. So all of these are calls to action, and they depend on where your message is in the continuum of the journey and how it relates to that goal that you just set. So I'm going to flip back as you're working on this, kind of a pro tip. When you actually word it, right now you're just getting it down there and you can word it for your communication later. But when you word it and build your communication, always make the call to action an active verb. So, say something like, get free gift if in the button that they're going to click rather than just free trial. So, getting something or using active verbs is another thing to put there. So you filled out the call to action. And if you haven't completed this, remember we just have to move on for the time being. Um, the next part of this, though, is going to be what I call the story builder. And at this point, we're just making a little note or an outline, a short outline for our content. You're just going to arrange some of that key messaging stuff, take some notes in a way that's going to make sense for whatever media that you're working on. So for instance, that, putting this together for a tweet or a sign at your shop, your brick and mortar store is going to have character limits. But if you have an e-blast or website blog, you're going to have a lot more notes. So right now, keeping in mind what communication you have and where you're going with it. If it's a whole campaign, you're going to have a lot more notes. So you're going back to your target market. You're thinking like your persona. Remember, our persona had values, they had attitudes, they had lifestyle. So you're in that head, and we're going to go ahead and put together, this is the desire and interest part, and we're going to go back and put that into our worksheet under the story builder. So story builder, there's a long explanation here, and I call it the hero in the story. And let me just tell you what I mean by that. So the hero is your customer, and the customer has a problem, and you have the advantage or solution that we explained above. And this is kind of like, every storyline, that it reaches to where there's a resolution. That's kind of what you want your content to do in your message. It doesn't always necessarily be a story, but it can be a story. But we want it to take that arc of talking to the customer about their problem and sharing with them the solution. So we're going to do that with these interest and desire, and I've combined them in here to story builder. And I want you to go back to those key messages that you created right up here, and these benefits that you created up here, and think about what notes that you could put into your story builder. For example, let's say I own a printing shop, because I actually did own a printing shop. And let's say my key messages had to do about the advantages of having all the services they need under one roof, whether it's design and graphics, whether it's quick copies, whether it's full 4-color printing presses. That and also my USP was about talking to a real person instead of being online, because the advantages of a real person is that you get the designs right the first time and you have additional input on creativity. So the total USP was about creative concepts and delivered fast because it's under one roof. And let's say I match that with a sales promotion that's going to be about free design for my new customers only. Sales promotion for new customers. That's my goal. So I might, in my story builder, put something like, oh, I remember my favorite customer, Michelle, was in a jam after she ordered brochures online and they didn't get there on time. And then they were wrong. So I'm going to write a note to interview my fave customer, Michelle. And and I'm going to say I'm going to get a testimonial from her, and I'm going to use a video that I designed about designing brochures, and to support my fast turnaround, I'm going to go ahead and do some claims on turnaround times. And these are just bullet points. These are just notes that I'm going to build a story around. Maybe I actually could do a story on Michelle and really feature her business and do a kind of a win-win. And then I could leverage it because she'd want to share with her customers. You can start to get on a roll with this. That's the idea of going through this process. Um, so I want you can also make up fictional stories too. Remember, going back to your persona, you can make a fictional story that's based on maybe multiple customer experiences, as long as you don't get it to be too complicated. If you do use real customers, just a little tip, make sure you get written customer releases when you share their story. So let me give you a few more minutes to get some notes under story, get some ideas down. And again, you're not going to have your full copy here. You're not wordsmithing. Later, you'll craft the actual wording. You're getting the outline down. I want you to see the interest bubble up into desire with some of these examples. So I see there is a question actually in the chat on companies that are not open yet. So when you're doing your marketing, it goes back to your goal. So I don't know what your initial goal is if you're not open yet. So your initial goals could be to be developing your prospect list early, and you might need to think about how you can do what you can offer, since you don't maybe you don't actually have your products or services on available. So you might think about what you can offer. My example above, maybe of a how-to, is another thing that you can start to get out there to get some promotion going. There's a lot of things that you can do, but it is harder before you're just started. Now, you don't want to wait to develop your messaging for when you do open the doors. You want to have this all ready to launch. So your process now could also be focused on what's going to happen once you are actually open. What are your first series of messages? And we're going to talk about a content planner later that you can use to that. But right now we're focusing on just one message, and you can go through the process with one goal and how you will communicate to reach that goal with one message.
We also had a question pop up in the Q&A, Heidi, about what is the best way to promote yourself if you want to rebrand yourself as value focused rather than price focused.
I hope you were in on our session last 2 weeks ago, because we talked very much about that, because that's a positioning question, and that has to do with how you're positioning against the competition to meet your buyer's criteria, and one of those criteria not be solely on price, and then you're going to substantiate that value. So it's the same things that we've been talking about. How does that value, what specifically is that value? I think last session I gave, maybe I did, I don't know, an example of a paint company that used non-toxic ingredients for their paint, and it was priced higher. Um, but they talked about value in there. They translated that feature advantage benefit in the fact that um, the paint actually lasted longer. So if you were looking at the cost per gallon, it seems higher. But if you're looking at the cost of not having to repaint as often, the value is stronger. So you really have to dig into what that's going to translate into in the message. So you're going to have to do some work on describing and figuring out what that value means in the so what category. Okay. All right, I don't want to get lost on just this story builder. We could spend a ton of time on it. I want you to spend a ton of time on it. But we do need to talk about this last part on the activity sheet. This is where this is what I call the creative part. This is where you brainstorm how you're going to grab their attention. A lot of times this can just come up. It might evolve organically out of the story, but sometimes it takes a little bit of creativity. And this whole process, by the way, if you have, if you work with any kind of outsource or vendors on some of your marketing communications, this is a process to do with them or to provide to them as part of their work that they're going to do to come up with the creative messaging. This last section is really about, what are you going to do to grab that attention? What's going to make this whole message uh, newsworthy, exciting? In today's vernacular, what's going to make it search relevant? What's going to make it, come up? So sometimes it's just a image, if it's a visual message, a Facebook post, a lot about, those type of things are really about the attractive image. Other times it's a headline or a really thought provoking question that comes out of what your action and your message is. Um, but I guess the benefit of doing it in reverse is that you're not trying to come up with that until you really get down what some of your message points are and what your actual call to action is. So don't worry if today you don't have the idea for this because we're short on time. This is a great topic for your working with your SBDC counselor, your marketing outsource team, your your partners in your business, and this is a creative kind of moment to work this out. Then you're going to flip around the actual thing. That's the rough draft that you've created. You're going to create the actual content in reverse. So you'll start with what grabs the attention and you'll tell the story in a way that builds interest and desire. And then you'll have the call to the action. Now, call to actions, there's a lot of different philosophies on how that goes. You could put multiple call to actions in. You could have a soft or hard call to action. You could have the call to action come up more frequently within the interest and desire so that somebody can take action sooner or later. We don't really have time to go into all of that, but there's a lot of information that's out there on how to hone in on that call to action. All right, we've covered a lot in a short time period in order to get the flavor of how to do this. Let's go ahead on to just kind of seeing where we're at. We've talked about our marketing goals and how we create a specific objective for our each communication. We've talked about matching our sales promotion to goals. So when we have an appropriate goal, then we can choose a sales promotion that's going to match it. Remember, sales promotions are short and they have expiration dates. They create scarcity. So those are important parts of that. Each communication is going to follow the ADA formula. We'll use our FAB analysis and that key message so that we're sticking on message. And that, remember, still was equated back to the unique selling proposition. So again, consistency is part of it's just built into the process. We can use our hero's story and we can use our buyer's process as also as we fill in that interest and desire and action. Again, it could be used for an entire campaign, a single advertisement, a blog post. So this is not something I have enough time for a poll, but I want to know, or I have you guys give me some feedback. Is this process different than your usual process of crafting marketing messages? I'm thinking that some parts of it are probably the same, but maybe this formalizes it. Um, there are parts of this process that you might need to spend for your business more time with. And then maybe there are parts that you need to spend less. And it's based on your customer knowledge and your industry and your product or service. But once you have this basic planner completed, um, you can start to share it with others on your team to get feedback and refinement. You can actually start to use this to execute on your various platforms like your social media. You could hire, let's say writing's not your thing and you want a professional copywriter to smooth out the final text, but you've given them, you're not leaving it to chance what that messaging is going to be. You've given them the outline for the ADA. So eventually you will sort of translate this into an execution. Any other questions at this point, Laura?
No open questions. So again, if you do have a question, maybe we missed it in the chat, make sure to put that in the Q&A. Just a couple comments. Some people say like, yes, this definitely helps to formalize the process for them. So I think that this activity is definitely helpful for like taking all of that, all of that marketing monster and kind of formalizing it for them.
Right. And so this isn't as formal as a complete marketing plan, but we are actually touching on little parts of a marketing plan. So it's kind of like we're getting this fast track version of some of the things that we would do throughout a marketing planning process. But we are moving fast. So I apologize. There's a lot still to cover, but we're going to talk about something that's really important, and that's synergy. You've heard my cliche, the whole is greater. It's not my cliche. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. This is really true about marketing because if you're not linking all of your messages together, you're really diluting them. And there's a lot of ways that we create synergy, but part of the process that we've already done is designed to do that. By having that unique selling principle to keep going back to measure all future messages against, by really looking at our target markets, wants, needs, values, attitudes, so that we address them consistently, to have those benefit messages outlined, to look at all of these things as if they're building blocks leading up to a whole that's greater. Rather than if you are scattered in your messaging and you come up with the message of the day and it's not consistent with your USP, or it's talking to various different target markets all in the same message space, you're really diluting your message. So the next part about synergy is to be able to coordinate your messages, coordinating them, stacking them to achieve maximum effect, stacking them or pulsing them. Stacking means combining them at the same time, pulsing them meaning off and on. Playing with the timing between your tactics will allow you to see if better results can be gained. So you can tell maybe you have to add a third or a fourth tactic before something happens in terms of a threshold of response. There are different impressions that are created by different media, like print media or e-blast or social media, but all together they get multiplied. So these impressions are going to have a compounding effect. Next session, we're going to look at media vehicles, so I don't want to spend today's time on that. But I want to leave you with something that will help you start to think about this principle of organizing your messages across various platforms. So it's just one more item that's in that toolkit of the right message to the right audience at the right time about your right product or service. So to create synergy, not only do we have to choose the right vehicles, which we'll talk about next week, we also need to kind of coordinate the timing, and synchronizing that is usually done with something that I call a content calendar. And content planning is really, I think was invented mostly for managing social or social channels. But for a lot of businesses, it really makes sense now to combine their offline and online messaging strategies in one place when they're looking at the timing. So a content calendar can take a lot of different formats, and it can organize a lot of different things. Some of the things that I would include is, first of all, if you can really focus your content by target market. If you're segmenting your market, make sure that your content calendar addresses that there's different messages that go to different markets. You may have some overall branding messages that talk to more than one market, but we've really been pushing the idea that the more effective marketing messages are going to be talking specifically to a customer segment's needs. The other thing a content calendar does is it organizes which methods you're going to use, and that's kind of helpful for planning. It's not a budget, so it doesn't necessarily include costs, although you can coordinate the two. I've seen it done. It can get a little bit messy. But the key thing is looking at time, how these different messages stack up over time. Other things that could be added, like I mentioned, is budgets or marketing partners that are involved. You could even add some accountability to it. There are just many, many ways to build a calendar. I like the simplicity of spreadsheets, so that's what I'm going to share with you. I think that what I like about it is you can put everything together on a single page if you keep it simple. I like that they're sortable for times when you want to sort, but you would still need backup detail for your messages, such as the work that we've done today. So let me just show you I'm going to show you a quick example of a type of tool that could be used for content planning or a content calendar. Um, let me share my screen on this one. It's not much bigger. It's a little bit bigger. So at the top of this, you have the time frames, okay? And so this one has a full year, but it's broken down all the way down to weeks, which I like weekly because if you're getting into social media, you might really need to plan that granularly. On the left, you could organize this in a lot of different ways. You might have your messages. You might organize it by your target market, or you might organize it by different sales promos you're doing, which again would be connected to your target market, or you might organize it by product benefits for each of those market segments. And you could do a combination of these things. You could even put some general branding on there if you want to put if you want to make this comprehensive. Some people have some overall relationships, which is sort of branding, but that's places like a newsletter or a blog. You could even put this down um, into a couple of different other formats, but this is the part that you would customize based on the media that you are using. I use this plan then to see how I'm going to leverage one message, like a sales promotion on price, across several different media. So I didn't point out the down here is the coding, if you will, because I'm doing this granularly by week. I don't have a lot of space. So it shows different media that I might be using. So for social media, I might say that I want to have a post up every week. Well, how do I plan what that's going to be? Well, week one, it might be a sales promotion on price. Week two, it might be a different sales promotion. Or I might be doing something that talks about my blog that I just put up and it's a link. Maybe then I go to talking about my price sales promotion. Maybe I also have a brand post. And so you're showing that you're having something happen that's going through, that you're not neglecting any of your messages in this particular free media because it's a media that allows you to do a lot with a lower budget. But maybe I have my direct mail that I do twice a year, and I want to make sure that I have that on my calendar. And I want to make sure that I'm not putting my sales promo in there because the shelf life is very long. My sales promo is a really short offer. So I'm putting different kind of relationship building messages there. The substance of my support or my proofs of my advantages and benefits and that kind of messaging going in there. Um, I also can use this, like I mentioned, to plan cross promotion, which I'm a big fan of. And we talked a little bit about that last session. I could have a cross promotion, maybe some partner marketing with another um, organization. Let's say I'm doing one of those. Maybe I do donate some of my product proceeds to nonprofits, and I have I work some co-promotion with them through that. Maybe I used the example last year that I was a printing business and I had a sign company. We did different things, but we shared and cross promoted each of our products with our target markets. And maybe I line up that promotion during the month of April, and I'm making sure that I've got my e-blast that goes out followed by my social media, and I've got some digital ads running, and I'm keeping pulsing on my social media. And then I'm doing some other stuff, which is going to be maybe my partner and I are doing something in store that we're setting up that promotion. But this lets you see the timing. And as I said, the stacking or the pulsing of what you're doing. This is a this is a very simple full year calendar. It's really, I think, more for master planning. You could do something for shorter time periods. I would recommend if you're just really new at this, just to pick a quarter, do 3 months, and plot out your messages for the 3 months, and then make sure you're covering all of those messages for all of those target markets that you created on those other sheets. Remember, you aren't doing just one exercise here; you're doing it per target market. So hopefully that makes some sense. You don't really have to use this format. You should be mapping out your coordinated message in some way, because that's how you're going to see if there's any gaps, or if you're going to see if there's any messages that maybe need some more reinforcing. Maybe this product benefit is really weak and I need to put in some more messages within that. So that gives you an idea. We're getting kind of close here on time. So as I wind down, let me just tell you where we can go from here. So as we wind down, I want you to begin this marketing turnaround by strategically starting all your messages with clear goals and synergy in mind. So your first next step is really going to go back to those tools. My heart won't be broken if you don't like that worksheet, but do go through the process of organizing your features by advantage and benefit, and go through the process of making your key message match those market segments and those benefits. Get that story down. Then also, again, have those marketing goals organized. You know what your overarching goals are that we talked about, whether it's new business, retention, product specific, and then link specific goals to every communication. Every single communication that you do needs to have some type of what do you expect them to do after they have been touched by this message. Um, in this way, you build what I call an inventory of stories. So I think that that's where you can then schedule them across those different platforms. Um, I want to say that when you're doing that goal work, if you have an SBDC counselor, really talk to that counselor about what marketing goals would best serve your larger business and financial necessities at this time, and plan those objectives around them. Consider how sales promo really does achieve some business objectives more quickly. Um, but those inventory of stories is going to give you the value of that consistency, that credibility behind the benefit statement. So all of these tools are being used together, wrapped around that marketing goal that you've come up with that supports your business goals, your financial planning. And then last thing is to start a content plan. If you're setting up new activities without any kind of cohesive picture of what comes next, I know it's seat of your pants most of the time, it's just in time marketing, but this is probably the biggest advantage you can give yourself in a marketing turnaround as far as boosting effectiveness, is to start to schedule it out. Plotting out each message, whether it's your next pop-up on your website or a direct mail coupon and val pack, so that you can have that synergy around the other tactics. So that's kind of your homework. If I were to give a homework assignment, is to play with the idea of planning out and investing in some kind of a content plan. Other things you can do if you aren't working with an SBDC counselor on your marketing goals and messages. Again, I think I've mentioned that two heads are better than one. So think about the advantages of that. Take a look at your recent marketing efforts. And this is kind of a lead in to next session. If you want bonus points, you're going to look at how you're measuring your effectiveness. Our session next time is going to talk about how measurement is going to keep this marketing turnaround going. So every single communication that you have, all of the communications that you're putting in that content plan, ideally would have some methodology of measurement. So that's one of the things that you can do next. Of course, then I have to do a shameless pitch that you attend the next session of the Great Marketing Turnaround so that you can apply, and this should say not just your target market and positioning, but also your messaging strategies today to some specific methods or media that you could use in the future. So let's do one quick round of questions as we kind of round things up here.
I did have a question in the Q&A regarding your content template, Heidi, if you want to speak to how, or I guess how we can get their hands on that content.
Okay, I was actually going to come up with that next, but so if you would like a copy of the content calendar, as well as I have some articles on some of the topics that we mentioned, like the psychology of influencing. I have a special offer. It's called my You Scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. No, we really appreciate feedback that helps us improve our programs. And so there will be a survey at the end of this. There's a few more things that we wanted to talk about. But if you complete that survey, there's a place where you can put your email. The email is optional, so you don't have to if you don't need a copy of my content calendar. But I'll send you the content plan spreadsheet if you can go ahead and complete that evaluation at the end. Were there any other questions?
I did see one come up in the chat. Unfortunately, I lost it. Let me scroll up and see if I can find it really quick.
We have an example.
Oh yeah, it was an example someone posted, and then they were wondering if that's kind of what you were talking about. It seemed a little fuzzy, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I'm trying to scan through it really. It's a one about the construction company.
Correct. That's the one.
So it's you're very creative. I like how you're making an analogy into the kingdom, and that could actually be a tool from an attention grabbing if your target market resonates with that. But you got to think like your target market, and if that kind of idea of that fantasy or that analogy to the kingdom or something would not resonate, then that would be more of a creative decision. But I do want to say that I think one of the things that might be missing from that story is the support of what it is on your unique selling principle because bravery, diligence, shiny sanitary apartment complex. I want to know more what shiny means. I want to know more what sanitary means. And I want the support of where that comes from. But I like the idea that you've put it into a story. Maybe one of the things that would benefit everyone is that persona exercise. There's a lot of information that you can do to develop your customer persona. And when you get into your customer persona, you're really thinking like them and you're thinking like their process of buying. And so you get a little bit better idea on what their pain points are and what information they're looking for. I know that there was a client I talked to a while ago and they weren't getting the conversion that they wanted, this or that, and it turns out they were really hiding their price. And price was one of the things that was a key buying criteria, but they were burying their price. And one of the things that they found out is that people wouldn't complete the journey because they couldn't get the information they needed in their messaging and their process. So it may not be price. I'm using that as an example, but think about the information that you need to provide in your story. Your story still has to have what that benefit is and then the support points. I think there was a slide that I had in earlier that says your messaging is just 2 or 3 sentences, but then the next thing, the advanced level of your messaging might be to bullet point your proof. What's your proof going to be? If you say that your toothpaste prevents cavities, this is the old campaign, 5 out of 6 dentists recommend Crest, or I don't even know the brand because it's so old, but that's the classic marketing example is have some bullet points that will give your proof within that message statement. But yes, that's the right direction. Were there any other questions, Laura?
No other questions in the Q&A. I didn't see any come up in the chat.
Okay, well, thank you for talking with us today. As a reminder, there is a request for counseling form on our website. This is the process for getting that no fee counseling is to complete that form. Um, when you do, you would have an initial session with your lead counselor. And that's where you really talk about those areas of assistance that you need. Then you would have follow on sessions as you work on your goals. Maybe you would meet with other co counselors for specialty topic work. And then that ongoing relationship is another accountability in terms of tracking your business goals. So, your counselor would say, hey, let me see your content plan for next quarter. And that's another benefit of having your SBDC counselor there. Other upcoming webinars that we have going on, I already mentioned that session 3 will be on February 18th. Before that, there's going to be a conversations. So it's going to be like an open forum for online marketing. So those of you who are exploring or wanting to really get more information about marketing online to attend the Delivering Digitally We also have sessions tailored to restaurants. So we have a whole series for restaurants. The next topic is going to be ghost kitchen and virtual concepts, and that will be on March 2nd. And just another reminder, if you want more information, this is our website, maricopa-sbdc.com. That's where you can find these training events. You can learn more about our counselors. There's other COVID-19 resources. We have a lot of information right now on the PPP and the process in terms of the EIDL loans. So that's another big resource that the website offers. And I would say at this point, we even get to finish early.
Yeah, I don't see any other questions coming in. Again, as Heidi said, you will get that little freebie if you do complete our survey. We will email you that content planner. And again, please complete our survey, as this helps us to improve our programming, and it lets us know kind of what topics and information you're currently facing with your business.
Yep, I appreciate it.
Yeah, and again, if you have any last minute questions, now is your chance. I'm going to put one more time our events calendar to our website in the chat right now, so that way you can go ahead and sign up for your next session, whether it's with Heidi's Great Marketing, or maybe it's that digital marketing session coming up later this month. It will be in that link. And Hillary asked, where's the survey? As you end this webinar, it will automatically pop up for you to complete. And if you have any trouble with it, if it doesn't pop up for you, you got an email from me earlier this week, just as a reminder about this webinar, feel free to email me if for whatever reason you weren't able to access that survey after this webinar.
Thank you all.
All right, and with that, thank you all for coming, and we hope to see you at our next one. And thank you, Heidi, for your time and presenting all this great information. Have a great day.